It's alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Hello and welcome to Alive After Reading. I'm your host, Tim Niederreiter, and I'm alone today in the middle of the week because, sometimes you have trouble booking guests when you're trying to do guests twice a week, and sometimes the warnings butt in to the introduction. But anyway, I'm a fantasy author. I write books like the Demon Hunter series, and I've got other series coming out soon. And of course, I've got the Shifter Empire series out. Fantasy, high adventure, a little bit of romance in there. That's what my books are like. But today, I have a little bit of story time for you, as the title of this episode might imply if you read it. This is about, well, I would say real life, but it was school. It was about an incident I had, when I was a little kid. A year or two before I wrote my first book, I was about 11 years old. I think I was probably 11 at this point, unless it happened in the spring, in which case I was 12. And I got moved to alternative school the year before. This was my first year in alternative school, so I got moved there after 5th grade. So I was a 6th grader, but I got put up in the high school class because I had good grades and I got along. Well, I didn't get along with anybody. That's why we got sent to alternative school. This is the kind of alternative school where everyone was always in trouble. People were going to court fairly frequently for various problems. Most of them were teenagers in my class. And I was 11 or 12. And I got sent there basically because even though I was pretty good at school, as far as the grades and doing the tasks, I was autistic, just diagnosed a year or two before that, or maybe just a few months before. I have ADHD and autism obviously still, and I just couldn't handle it back then. I got very quick to anger. I was very confused by a lot of things. I couldn't handle being around people or dealing with competition. I had a lot of problems as a kid. And I mean, I still have a lot of problems, but I handle them a lot better now, or at least I like to think I do. I definitely do. Let's put it that way. I'm not a kid anymore. It's been 20 years. So my kind of habits at this alternative school, there were only like 10 kids in the class. This was basically one of the tougher parts to go to, but it was actually not that bad of an experience. It's not like they were disciplinarians. These people were trying to rehabilitate these kids, which is really smart and makes a lot of sense. But a lot of these kids, they're bottoming out. They're down and outers. They're at the bottom of the heap, and I was there too. Even though I got bumped up a grade, basically, to be in the high school class. There was only 2 separate classes. There was the one for the younger kids and the one for the older kids. Because I was right on the cusp, and I had the grades, I got sent to the older kid class, the high school class. And so there were a bunch of people I remember from back then, pretty clearly. Some of the counselor people, the assistants, paraprofessionals, I guess you'd call them now. I remember, Carl Rosendale was the counselor. Susan Gravelin was the main teacher, and a bunch of other ones. There was a ton of people. I mean, a ton of memories from back then that are formative to me and really did inform what I write now. But those were mostly not very pleasant memories. In fact, I would say they're mostly pretty unpleasant because I was so bad. I was so unpleasant back then. I mean, being a bad kid is different than being a nasty adult, because when you're a bad kid, you're just learning and you're behind maybe, but you're learning. And one of the advantages of being a bad kid, I'm not saying you should encourage kids to be bad. In fact, the opposite. But when a kid is wrong and doing stuff that hurts them, basically, like I was always doing, well, they get this opportunity to learn what it's like to hurt and to get hurt a lot. And that's what I learned from back then, at least over time. It did take a lot longer than the time I was alternative school. I was only there for 2 years. It took a lot longer than that to learn not to get hurt. I still get hurt, but not to hurt other people. And that means I get hurt less too. That's the nature of relationships, at least as far as I'm concerned, as far as I know, as far as I think about things. So I was at alternative school, but this story is not about one of the more grim elements here or the darker times, even though it does involve kind of a fight, because I being as critical and nasty as I was back then, I would just berate people all the time. I had very low opinion of my fellow students, and even though I got along with the paraprofessionals and the teachers better than some of the other students, I was still very angry a lot of the time. I was so angry, and I thought I didn't realize things were getting better basically over time. But I did recover a lot, and I got a lot better at dealing with people then. It's just I was making a high jump from out of a well, like Michael Stackpole said in one of his old podcasts that I actually hadn't listened to at this point. That's how long ago this was. Anyway, podcasting was just a twinkle in the eye. This was 2001 or 2002. And I guess there were podcasts, but they were very new. And I had not written a book yet. That's how old this was. I mean, this was a couple years before that. So anyway, I mentioned that already. But regardless, I'd go to school, I'd have a bag of snacks, and I would just do the work, and I'd get into scrapes, and I'd be upset with people, and then people would be upset with me. That's the kind of thing. That's how this rolled. So one of these kids, I'm not going to say his name, one of these other kids, he was kind of he was my early antagonist. He was really nasty for most of the time I was there. I mean, at least not nasty. We just didn't get along. And I don't know exactly what it was his deal was. I remember we didn't like the same kinds of music. I mean, I didn't like music at all back then. That's how messed up I was. I didn't like any music, basically, except for the stuff I listened to on the car when my family took her long trips around the country or to Pennsylvania or whatever to see relatives. And so I ended up getting angry at this guy around snack time. So I had my bag with me, my bag of snacks. And I actually wrote a journal about this a while, maybe a year after this happened. So I wish I'd looked it up. It's so hard to find anything regarding this incident, the yogurt incident, because I took lemon yogurt. Lemon is like my favorite taste in the fruit kingdom. I don't think fruit's a kingdom, but never mind. It's one of my favorite tastes. So I had this lemon yogurt that I would eat a cup of lemon yogurt every day, not like a cup, measuring cup. You know what I mean? A little container of lemon yogurt as a kid. And it's still in the bag. And I have this bad habit of using kind of, let's say, improvised weapons in my old school fights and stuff. And so I grabbed this bag, because it's got my lunch bag, it's in my lunch food in it. Maybe this was after lunch, so my food was probably out of it. I do not remember. Probably there was still all the other food in there too. So I'm swinging this bag, and I'm swinging it like a sling, like so it's swinging around in my hand, and I hit him on the head a couple times with it. I think I hit him a couple times with this bag, and the lemon yogurt just explodes out of it. And the lemon yogurt is getting on the floor, and it gets on him and me. It was silly. There's not even that much of this yogurt, so it can't have been that big of an explosion. But so I'm not going to exaggerate too much. But there was yogurt on the floor. And people are puzzled, and it's a little bit funny, but people are very puzzled. This yogurt explodes, so I get in trouble, of course. But for a long time, this is one of those things my mom would always tell me to write about. You write about this, write about that. Write about the stuff that happened to you in alternative school when I'd start writing a few years later, right after I got back from alternative. Well, actually, I must have just gotten out of alternative school, or I was about to get out of it when I started writing my first fiction. And so this is kind of the background from which I approach my fiction, is being the kid that hated everybody and was largely despised by people. But there's still moments. There's always those absurd moments. My fellow kids anyway. Most of my fellow kids probably didn't like me. I'd imagine they wouldn't. Or they didn't have an opinion of me, which is actually the most common thing for kids to have regarding each other. They didn't notice. Not the most perceptive, because they don't have the practice to recognize what's going on. Anyway, when I was that age, I sure didn't either. And I could get angry about anything. So I don't even remember what caused me to start swinging this bag of lemon yogurt at my fellow student. And I don't even recall what the punishment was. It's been a long time. I should have looked it up. I know I have a journal about it somewhere. But this is the best I can remember of it right now. And the lemon yogurt thing, it's a little silly. It's not too outlandish. But that's one of the more goofy things I did that's not just dark and bitter about that time. And don't get me wrong, that time was very bitter. It hurt. It hurt a lot. I was upset all the time. I got upset at even people I normally got along with fairly frequently. I got in fights with my brothers and my my friends, you know, I mean, I didn't get invited to my friends that much. That's one of the things I used to think, and I still kind of think this about friends, is friends are like family, but they can quit. You know, your family just generally doesn't quit on you. It takes a lot more to make them quit, because at least in my experience with my family. And that's probably personal, but when I was a kid, I was very worried about that kind of thing. I was so full of anger. Yeah, the story isn't as funny as in the retelling as I thought it'd be. But that's one of the things about the audience. You know, when you think about a story, you have an approach to it, and my approach has never been that comedic. I mean, I like comedy. I like funny things. I like to laugh. In fact, most of the media I consume is funny. But yeah, delivering humor, not always the best at it, especially out loud. Especially in this storytelling format out loud. I'm not doing a lot of experience with it. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this for something. You know, I mean, somehow, it's just a little midweek episode. I thought I should share it because it is one of those stories that really does inform a little bit about your host, you know, yours truly here. And you can find my books, by the way. Let's do the plugs now. Yeah, you can find my books on Amazon.com. Demon Hunters series 1 through 3 are out. And there's a little book 0 if you want to sample that. I've got, that's for 99 cents. That's The Crimson Suitor. And then I've got the Shifter Empire books 1 and 2. And I've got a bunch of other books out. You can find more about this podcast at mentalcellarpublications.com. You can read my blog at dwellerofthedeep.wordpress.com. I think there'll be an update coming soon for that, because I need to spend more time on the blog. It has a whole bunch of people I don't reach otherwise. So yeah, and you can, and let me see, what else is there? Yeah, that's about it. mentalcellarpublications.com. Find the rest of the podcast. Hosted by Libsyn. And thanks for listening, people. Stay safe out there, and I'll talk to you again soon. New episodes drop on Sundays and Wednesdays. So subscribe if you haven't already. Bye-bye.
That tears it.